Eric Metaxas joins us now. He is the host of the Eric Metaxas radio show, which is now going to air on TBN. Eric, congratulations.
Thank you, but how can a radio show air on a TV station? I don't get it.
How did you get to make that happen?
It's kind of complicated. Matt Crouch had the crazy idea. I thought it was crazy, and then I realized, no, I'm crazy because he's kind of a genius, media genius. They created a studio for me in New York. When you see it, everybody gasps. They created the most gorgeous TV studio.
So a hard turn onto the president's immigration plan. Senator Richard Blumenthal made the point that if the plan was in place when his grandfather was alive, his grandfather wouldn't have been allowed to come to the United States. What do you make of the president's plan?
First of all, I got to say, I think Blumenthal is crazy to say such a thing. And it's, you know what it is? It's sad to me that we've gotten to a point where the Democrats are playing hardball politics. They're going to say almost anything. For Blumenthal to say that it's utterly meaningless. The fact is that we have a president who finally has the guts and the courage to see the situation as it is. If we do not take a hard line on illegal immigration, on building a wall and having an actual border, this didn't matter 40 years ago. It matters today. And so I am 1,000% behind his plan, and probably the Democrats are going to continue to say things like this. We have a president who's a real leader, and he can ignore those kinds of nattering nabobs of negativism, to quote Spiro Agnew and William Safire, and he's going to do the job the American people elected him to do.
Eric, on the issue of abortion, even among evangelicals, there's not consensus on when there should be exceptions or even when life begins. What do you think? What's your take?
Well, I think, first of all, the great thing about the Alabama law is it has forced a conversation in the country that we should have had in 1973. The Supreme Court, and they did the same thing with same-sex marriage, they very ham-handedly and prematurely made a law that ought to have been discussed so that the states could decide it. That's what the founders said ought to happen. The people ought to, government ought to be as local as possible, and that you only resort to the federal level. You only resort to the judiciary and the Constitution in the most extreme circumstances. This is something that we ought to discuss. Every state ought to be able to make its own laws. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't believe life begins at conception. I do. But the point is that we have a government that says we are supposed to talk about things on the state level. And so when you have people, I guess, really not allowing that conversation to happen, you have to do radical things. What they did in Alabama is radical. I agree with Pat Robertson that perhaps, saying 99 years to life for doctors performing abortions might be somewhat draconian. But the point is, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We need to have the conversation, and that doesn't happen overnight. What happened in 1973 happened overnight. Roe v. Wade is bad law. It's an abomination. We need to have the conversation, and the people of America need to think about what happens during an abortion. We need to discuss it. It is gruesome. We need to face the gruesomeness of it. Once we face the reality of abortion, which we have not done because of Roe v. Wade, once we face that, then we can have the ability to make laws that reflect the people's will. We haven't done that.
Eric, we're tight on time, but I want to sneak this question in. The other day I was on a flight talking to a woman about faith, and she couldn't seem to bifurcate faith over being identified by our politics. More and more, it seems Christians are identified by how they vote and who they vote for. Where do evangelicals draw the line before the credibility of our witness is undermined by politics?
I don't think we can worry about that too much. In other words, I'm sorry, what I'm saying is I think we sometimes worry about that too much. People in the day of Wilberforce, I wrote a biography of William Wilberforce, the great man who abolished the slave trade in the British Empire, led that battle politically. People told him to keep his faith out of politics. How do you keep your faith out of politics when people tell you the slave trade is okay? It's the law of the land. Shut up. At that point, you have to say, my faith in the God of the Bible demands that I get political, because God demands that I care about those Africans who are being enslaved. Similarly today, if I care about my fellow Americans, or for that case, in that case, everybody around the world, I have to sometimes express my faith politically. And I really think evangelicals often worry too much about their quote-unquote witness. And the fact of the matter is, if we don't stand up for the least of these, I kind of wonder, what gospel is it that you're preaching? So I really think we're at a time when, you know, it's a much longer conversation, but many evangelicals are all fussy about, oh, I don't want to be identified with this or that. And I think, you know what, you should worry about that less and worry about the unborn and justice more. And, you know, I'll leave it there.
I gather it's lively conversations like this is why you have a TV show coming on.
Thank you.
Eric, thank you.